Everything you learned about the pyramids in school was carefully chosen to keep you from asking the right questions. The workers, the ramps, the copper tools, it's a story that makes sense until you actually look at the evidence. And once you see what they're hiding, you can't unsee it. Right now, there are blocks of stone in Egypt that weigh more than a fully loaded 747 airplane. They were cut with such precision that you can't fit a piece of paper between them. And somehow, people with Bronze Age technology moved them into place with mathematical accuracy we struggle to replicate today. The official story says it was slaves with ropes. But when you examine what's actually there, the tool marks that shouldn't exist, the astronomical alignments that require advanced knowledge, the construction methods that don't match the timeline, a different picture emerges. And it's one that makes a lot of powerful people very uncomfortable. Let me ask you something. If I told you to build a perfect scale model of Earth, with the exact proportions of our planet's dimensions, using only rocks and rope, could you do it? Now imagine doing that without computers, without satellites, without even knowing that Earth is round. Because that's exactly what the Great Pyramid is. It's built at a scale of 1 to 43,200 of Earth's dimensions. The odds of that happening by accident are so astronomical that mathematicians won't even calculate them. But here's where it gets strange. When you bring this up to archaeologists, they don't engage with the evidence. They just repeat the same explanation like a script. Slaves, ramps, copper chisels, case closed, and if you keep pushing, suddenly you're labeled a conspiracy theorist. Which is interesting because since when is asking questions about evidence a conspiracy? The blocks themselves tell a story that doesn't match what we've been told. Take the granite boxes in the Serapeum of Saqqara. These aren't just big boxes, they're machined to tolerances of 0.02 of an inch. That's precision manufacturing. The insides of these boxes have tool marks that indicate they were hollowed out with some kind of tube drill that could bore through solid granite. We're talking about one of the hardest stones on Earth. And these weren't just 1 or 2 boxes. There are 24 of them, each weighing up to 70 tons, sitting in underground tunnels that are too narrow to have fit them through in the first place. When engineers examine these boxes today, they see evidence of techniques we only developed in the industrial age. Core drilling, machine polishing, perfectly flat surfaces across massive dimensions. Christopher Dunn, a precision engineer who has spent decades studying these artifacts, measured them with modern laser equipment and found accuracy that would be difficult to achieve even with current CNC machines. His conclusion? These weren't made by people hammering away with copper tools and stone pounders. They were manufactured. But manufactured by who? And when? The timeline we're given for the pyramids is roughly 4,500 years ago, during the 4th dynasty of Egypt. Pharaoh Khufu supposedly ordered the Great Pyramid built as his tomb, and tens of thousands of workers spent 20 years dragging stones up ramps to construct it. Except there's no evidence any pharaoh was ever buried there. No mummy, no treasure, no hieroglyphics inside declaring ownership like you find in actual Egyptian tombs. Nothing. Just 3 empty chambers and a lot of unanswered questions. The ramp theory doesn't work either, and engineers have known this for years. To build a ramp tall enough to reach the top of the Great Pyramid at a reasonable incline, you would need more material than the pyramid itself. And where did all that ramp material go? There's no debris field, no archaeological evidence of these massive ramps that supposedly existed. Some have suggested internal ramps, but the mathematics don't support moving blocks that weigh up to 80 tons through narrow internal passages while maintaining the structural integrity of the entire building. Then there's the math problem. The Great Pyramid contains roughly 2.3 million stone blocks. If it really took 20 years to build, the workers would have had to place a block every 2 minutes, working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for 2 decades straight. And these aren't bricks we're talking about. The average block weighs 2.5 tons, with some of the granite blocks in the King's Chamber weighing over 70 tons each. Those massive granite blocks were somehow transported from Aswan, which is 500 miles away. Let that sink in for a moment. 500 miles, through desert, moving stones that weigh as much as a military tank, and not just moving them, but placing them with such precision that the gaps between them are nearly invisible. Modern construction cranes struggle with loads that heavy, and we have hydraulics, steel cables, and computer guidance systems. But let's say you ignore all of that. Let's say you believe it's theoretically possible with enough manpower and time. That still doesn't explain the precision. The Great Pyramid is aligned to true north with an accuracy of 3/60ths of a single degree. How did Bronze Age workers achieve that? They would have needed to account for the precession of the equinoxes, understand stellar mechanics, and have mathematical knowledge that supposedly didn't exist for thousands of years. The four sides of the pyramid are aligned almost perfectly with the cardinal directions. The base is level to within less than an inch across 13 acres. 13 acres. Try getting a concrete foundation that level today and see how much it costs. The angle of the sides is exactly 51.8 degrees. Not randomly chosen, but mathematically significant. This angle appears throughout the structure in ways that encode pi, phi, and other mathematical constants that ancient Egyptians supposedly didn't know. And we haven't even talked about what's underneath. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed massive cavities and chambers beneath the Giza Plateau that have never been excavated. The Egyptian government restricts access to these areas and refuses to allow comprehensive surveys. Why? What's down there that they don't want people to see? Here's where the real cover-up begins to reveal itself. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, archaeologists found evidence that didn't fit the narrative. They found tool marks on stones that suggested advanced machinery. They found acoustic properties in the king's chamber that indicate knowledge of resonance and harmonics. They found chemical residues that suggested the use of advanced bonding agents. And what did the academic establishment do? They ignored it, buried it, dismissed anyone who brought it up as fringe. Zahi Hawass, former minister of Egyptian antiquities, has spent decades controlling access to Egyptian archaeological sites and dismissing alternative theories without proper investigation. When researchers request permission to conduct advanced surveys or tests that might challenge conventional timelines, those requests are often denied. Not because the proposed methods are unscientific, but because the findings might be inconvenient. There's evidence of water erosion on the Sphinx that suggests it's far older than the pyramids, possibly thousands of years older. Geologist Robert Schoch examined the weathering patterns and concluded they're consistent with prolonged rainfall, which hasn't occurred in Egypt for at least 7,000 years. That would place the Sphinx in a completely different era, before the rise of ancient Egyptian civilization as we know it. The response from establishment archaeologists? Denial. Not scientific refutation, just denial. Then there's the Orion correlation. The three pyramids of Giza are positioned to match the three stars of Orion's belt, not as they appear today, but as they appeared in 10,500 BC due to the precession of the equinoxes. The layout includes the Nile River corresponding to the Milky Way. This isn't speculation, the mathematical correlations are exact. But accepting this means accepting that whoever designed the Giza complex had knowledge of astronomical cycles that take 26,000 years to complete. How do you explain that with the conventional timeline? You don't. So you ignore it. You call it coincidence. You attack the people who notice it. You protect the narrative at all costs. Because if the pyramids are older than we've been told, if they required technology we claim didn't exist, then everything we think we know about the development of human civilization is wrong. And there are careers, reputations, and entire fields of study built on the current narrative. Admitting you've been wrong for 150 years is not something institutions do easily. But let's go even deeper. The pyramid isn't just architecturally impossible for the time period, it's also functionally mysterious. If it was a tomb, it's the worst designed tomb in Egypt. Real Egyptian tombs have walls covered in hieroglyphics, prayers, images of the afterlife, instructions for the dead. The Great Pyramid? Nothing. Bare stone. The only markings are some crude graffiti that appear to have been added later, and even those are suspect. Some researchers have pointed out that the cartouches supposedly identifying Khufu as the builder contain grammatical errors and use paint that didn't exist in the 4th dynasty. Meanwhile, the structure has properties that suggest it was designed for something else entirely. The shafts pointing out of the king's chamber are aimed at specific stars, Sirius and Orion, not approximately, exactly. Why would a tomb need that? The internal temperature remains constant at exactly 20 degrees Celsius regardless of outside temperature. The structure is positioned at the exact center of Earth's landmass, the geographical center of all continents. Again, the odds of that being accidental are essentially zero. Some engineers have proposed the pyramid was actually a power plant, using the aquifer beneath it and the chemical properties of the materials to generate electricity through piezoelectric effects. Sounds crazy until you look at the evidence. The granite in the king's chamber contains high amounts of quartz crystal. The shafts could have been designed for resonance. Tesla experimented with similar concepts. And there are ancient texts that describe the pyramids glowing and humming, not metaphorically but literally producing light and sound. The Egyptians themselves claimed they didn't build the pyramids. In ancient texts, they refer to the pyramids as already ancient, built by the gods before the dynasties began. The inventory stela found near the Sphinx explicitly states that Khufu restored the Sphinx, not built it, and that the pyramids were already there when he took power. This artifact was dismissed as a forgery by archaeologists not because of scientific testing, but because it contradicted the accepted timeline. That's not science. That's dogma. Then there's the global pattern. Pyramids aren't unique to Egypt. They appear in Mexico, Central America, Bosnia, China, Indonesia, cultures that supposedly had no contact with each other, all building pyramid structures with astronomical alignments. Many of these structures share design features that suggest common knowledge or a common source. The Pyramid of the Sun in Teotihuacan and the Great Pyramid have almost identical base dimensions. The Mayan pyramids also encode advanced astronomy and mathematics. What if these structures weren't built independently? What if they're remnants of a global civilization that existed before recorded history and was destroyed by some cataclysm? There's geological evidence of massive flooding around 12,800 years ago, the Younger Dryas impact event. Core samples from ice sheets show a sudden spike in platinum and other elements consistent with asteroid or comet impacts. Sea levels rose hundreds of feet, drowning coastal civilizations. Entire species went extinct. Climate changed overnight. If there was an advanced civilization before this event, most evidence would be underwater now, buried under sediment or destroyed by thousands of years of geological processes. The pyramids and other megalithic structures might be the only things that survived because they were so massively overbuilt. That would explain why they seem so out of place technologically. They weren't built by primitive people, they were built by survivors trying to preserve knowledge. Ancient texts from cultures around the world describe this cataclysm. The flood stories aren't just in the Bible. They exist in Sumerian texts, Hindu texts, Native American oral traditions, Aboriginal Australian stories. Different cultures, same story. An advanced world destroyed by water and fire, with a few survivors who tried to rebuild. The pyramids might be time capsules, encoding mathematical and astronomical knowledge in stone so it couldn't be lost. But modern archaeology refuses to seriously investigate this possibility, because it requires abandoning the linear model of civilization, the idea that humanity progressed steadily from primitive to advanced. The evidence suggests history is cyclical. Civilizations rise, fall, and rise again. We're not the first advanced society. We're just the most recent. And that truth is so threatening to established institutions that they'll dismiss any evidence that supports it, no matter how compelling. So, who really built the pyramids? The honest answer is we don't know. We know it wasn't Bronze Age Egyptians with copper tools because the evidence doesn't support that. We know the structures encode knowledge that supposedly didn't exist at the time. We know they're far more sophisticated than anything else built in that era by thousands of years. And we know that anyone who points this out, gets marginalized and attacked by the academic establishment. Maybe it was a lost civilization from the last ice age. Maybe it was an earlier advanced human culture that was destroyed and forgotten. Maybe the truth is even stranger than that. The point is, we're not being told the truth. We're being told a story that was invented in the 1800s by people who never examined the evidence with modern tools and who made assumptions based on their limited understanding. The cover-up isn't a room full of conspirators in a basement somewhere. It's a system that rewards conformity and punishes dissent. It's academics who know challenging the narrative will cost them their careers. It's institutions that value reputation over truth. It's a society that prefers comfortable lies to uncomfortable questions. The pyramids are still there. The evidence is still there. The mathematical impossibilities, the precision manufacturing, the astronomical alignments, the global connections, none of that has gone away. It's just been explained away with increasingly absurd theories about ramps and rope and unlimited manpower. And most people accept those explanations because questioning them means admitting we've been lied to about something fundamental. The pyramids aren't just ancient buildings. They're proof that our understanding of history is incomplete at best and deliberately false at worst. They're evidence of capabilities we've only recently rediscovered with modern technology. They're a challenge to the story we tell ourselves about human progress and the development of civilization. And they're a reminder that the biggest discoveries often come from asking questions that everyone else is too afraid to ask. Because the truth isn't always found in textbooks and academic journals. Sometimes it's hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone brave enough to look at the evidence without the filter of accepted narrative. The pyramids were built by someone with knowledge and technology far beyond what we give them credit for. Whether that was a lost human civilization, an earlier advanced society, or something else entirely, we won't know until we're willing to honestly investigate without worrying about protecting reputations and careers. Until then, the official story will remain what it is, a cover-up masquerading as consensus. Subscribe if you want more stories they don't want you questioning.